Welcome back to the laundromat. So, I had a couple of days to digest that performance of England against Ireland. I had a bit of thoughts of what England need to do to have even a chance of beating France this weekend at Twickenham. Excuse the voice, bit of a chest infection. Let's get right into this. So, let's talk personnel to start off with. I think the back row worked incredibly well against Ireland. I think having two Curry brothers and Earl in that back row meant they were incredibly mobile. It meant that they could get to breakdowns quickly and it stifled a lot of attacks. However, there's one change that I would make against France, and that is having Tom Willis in the team to start off with straight from the off. I would take Ben Curry off, I would keep Tom Curry on, and I would have Ben Earl at 6. Reason for this is because I feel like England need more big ball carriers to get over gain lines and have consistent gain line success. I think it was one of the issues that I noted in my review of England versus Ireland. I think they need to be able to cross the gain line, get front foot ball, and I just don't think they had that against Ireland when they had the ball in their hands. Another change, this time in the second row, I think George Martin. I'm a fan of George Martin. However, I think his mobility is a bit of an issue. I think England are a little bit scarce at second row as it is anyway. But I do think Chesham offers more of a mobility. I think he offers more around the park, even a bit more ball carrying than Martin does as well. And he doesn't take away anything in terms of line-out option that Martin doesn't give you anyway. So that's another change that I would make as well in my team selection. Jamie George is, of course, now back from injury. This is great. However, I think he's an option to bring off the bench rather than have starting. I think Cameron Dickey actually had a pretty good game against Ireland. I think there was one or two lineouts that were messed up. Maybe not necessarily his fault. I think he was solid. He's obviously a big guy, good at scrimmaging. And I think he's probably good around the park as well. And I think one of the key things here is against France, against that big, powerful pack, having people that you can bring off the bench to keep the power going, which is, I think, something that we didn't have against the Ireland game. I think having Jamie George in that hooker shirt to come on brings a wealth of experience, means that some of these mistakes that are made in the final 20 minutes of the game that we've seen for the last 6 games in a row now, or something ridiculous, maybe some of that gets put to bed. Talking about the substitutions, let's talk about who else I would have in here, right? Finn Baxter has got a great career ahead of him, no doubt about it. However, I would be putting Bevan Rodd at that loosehead tight shirt substitute, obviously Ediskinge starting, Bevan Rodd on the bench. There's a couple of reasons for this. Bevan Rodd is an excellent scrummager. For you, those of you that aren't familiar with the dark arts of scrummaging, I will tell you, probably something that gets lost in the stats and the facts and the B-haw and the knee-haw. Don't know what any of that means. But Bevan Rodd actually got Franz Melber sent off when Sale played the Stormers. I think they got beaten like 34-0. But Bevan Rodd out-scrummaged him. He's an excellent scrummager. And he's the kind of player that England needs to be bringing on to kind of close out games, see it out and close things off. Finn Baxter's much more of like a ball-carrying loosehead. I think in the future, he's going to be the starting loosehead, great around the park, but he's not exactly the power scrummager that you want to kind of close out a game. Something that the Bomb Squad does so well for South Africa. You kind of want something that's going to be very solid and stable coming onto the pitch. I think Martin will still be in the squad. Again, talking about the fact that we're just a bit bare at second rows. However, he'd strictly be on the bench for me, and he would stay on there unless an injury occurred to bring him on. And then I would also keep 2 back rowers. But unfortunately, Ben Curry, even though he had a great game, I wouldn't even have him on the bench. I think the 2 that you have to have on there are Chandler Cunningham South, and I think you have to have Ted Hill as well. For those of you that don't know, Ted Hill has had an excellent Premiership campaign so far, and I think it's really key to have as many big, powerful, ball-carrying back rowers in that team as much as you can, just to see if we can get some power forward, go forward ball. I would also take Harry Randall out. It's the same reason that I'm taking Finn Baxter out of the team. I think Harry Randall's a great scrum half, but he's not really someone who can kind of come in and control a game and close something out. I think he's someone that you probably could bring in to change the pace of a game, but I don't think it's really the pace of England that needs to change. I think it needs to be overall cohesiveness and ability to dictate a game and manage a game properly. And for that, I mean, the only other scrum half you've got in the squad is JVP, Jack Van Portfleet. But for me, do I go as far as taking Ben Spencer and somehow bringing him into the squad? I think maybe. I think he's a better option than JVP, as much as I'm a fan of JVP's. Talking now about the back line a little bit. I've debated this somewhat. And I think this is going to be the opinion that is going to set myself out apart from a lot of people. And it will probably get me a lot of stick here as well. Boy, how do I say this? Even though Marcus Smith was probably the best England player on the pitch against Ireland, I think it's time to maybe start Finn Smith. Now, against France, maybe that's not the selection choice, you know? Finn Smith has played excellently for Northampton for 2 years, but sticking him in his kind of first major start that's not Japan for England against France maybe is asking a little bit too much. But the reason that I'm at least like considering it, you know, maybe not fully pulling the trigger on selecting Finn Smith over Marcus Smith, is because I think Finn Smith offers you a lot more consistent game line success in terms of options, rather than relying on kind of like chaos, line breaks, or something random to happen, or an individual effort to get you over the game line success. Finn Smith, I think, is very good at bossing an attack, and I'll get into why that's important later on when I talk about actual tactics for the team. Sticking with personnel then, right, so centres, I would keep the same. I'd have Lawrence and I would have Slade in there. I would be tempted to maybe bring in Freeman and put him at 13 and maybe knock Slade off and put Lawrence back at the 12 shirt. But I do think defensive responsibilities at that 13 shirt against France are so key and so important. They like to whip it wide. And I think Freeman has struggled at points playing 13 for Northampton defensively. So for me personally, keep the centres the same. Let's not rock the boat on that one. And looking at the back three, so again, another controversial thing I'm going to say here. Freddie Stewart, I think, has to stay at 15. I don't think there's any other choice right now. George Furbank's still recovering from injury. And keeping Tommy Freeman on the wing, I think he's an excellent wing. I don't think anybody would complain about that. I would actually keep Caden Murley at that wing spot. And I'm going to detail why I would do that here, okay? I think the general zeitgeist on Murley is he's had one cap. He did not perform well. He made some, I'll be 100% fair, uncharacteristic rookie mistakes playing for England in his first cap. He was at the Aviva, first time playing for England, and away at Ireland is an incredibly hostile atmosphere. If he starts against France, he'll have the opportunity to have his first cap in Twickenham. Not his first cap. I mean more his first home start for England. That's better. Kind of found my way there eventually. Against France, I think there was some serious positives that you saw from him in that winger shirt when he was playing. His try was a bit of a highlight. And I think attacking-wise, he would be excellent, you know? I think if you are a coach and you suddenly drop him, his confidence is going to drop completely. But if you're a coach right now and you back him into that shirt and you say, you're playing in that shirt again, there's no winger on the bench coming off for you, the expectation is you're going to be playing the full 80 minutes, that's a huge confidence builder, especially at home, especially in an opportunity to steal a game that no one thinks that you can win as well. Stick him in there, keep him in there. It really kind of plays into kind of the tactical choice that I would make with this team as well, right? So, what's going to be different here? I would vote to take the kickoff and kick off to the opposition. I would pin it deep, straight from the off, have a solid chase, and I would kick for territory and keep them down there in their area, and then I would look to counter-attack as much as physically possible, okay? I'm talking about kicking for deep, looking for the counter kick. If they kick straight for touch, I'm looking to take the quick line out and go quickly. But the difference in the counter-attack in what they did against Ireland is, I think a lot of what they did against Ireland was route one stuff, catch the ball, counter-attack, go straight, or try and find an angle. I want people kind of in pods. I want the half of the pitch split, people designate to those halves, and they recognise when it's time to counter-attack. And from that counter-attack, that's when we start to see the game line success. I want forward pods. I want them split separately throughout the pitch. These four forwards should never be within the same pod because of their ball-carrying acumen. You have Ellis Genge in one pod, you have Chesman in another, probably the weakest ball carrier out of these four, but stick with me. Tom Willis in another one, and I'll put Ben Earl in another pod. No more of this kind of like taking a ball stationary as a forward and crashing forward. If you're a pod that's taking the ball, you're going to crashing from outside to in, sucking defenders in, and when you do that, you'll eventually create a second line that your attack can utilise and whipping the ball wide. It needs to be really disciplined, really quick, and show that you can have this like attacking speed, you know? And the way that you kind of really solidify this and make sure this works is that you have 2 10s working unison. Rugby Illuminati. There's only 1 10 on the pitch. How are you going to have 2 10s? I'll tell you how. You have Henry Slade, and you have, whether it's Finn Smith or Marcus Smith being interchangeable. Not only does this mean that you have like 2 people that can boss the attack, but what this actually does is it gives a sense of freedom for these 10s so that they can be decisive. Basically what I'm saying is if these 10s take the ball in hand and they get tackled, they're not afraid of that because they know there's going to be another 10 to take over that position of formation and giving the calls. So they can, you know, if they're willing to take the ball into contact and they want to go down and they get tackled because they can see a space, they can make a decision and go with it. It's all about decisiveness. Decisiveness, picking a gap, and even if it's not there, just going with it and sticking with it, and then knowing that you've either, if you're Marcus or Finn Smith, you've got Henry Slade behind you that can come in and take that position at 10, or vice versa. South Africa did this during the World Cup. They did this with whoever played at 10, whether it was Pollard, Manny Libok. They would often change with whoever was playing at the 15 shirt, whether it was Willemse or Willie LaRue. It makes sure that your speed and attack is just consistent, it stays high, and you're not reliant on just like a 10 being there ready to take the ball, right? Because you can have someone that can fill in into that 10 shirt that isn't necessarily got 10 on the back of their shirt. I would be hesitant to kick against France. We all know who France have, right? Not only do they have a massive pack, but they have Dupont, and they also have a back 3 and a 10 and centres that will all utilise space if they find a dog leg and they will, you know, they would utilise it, right? I'm talking about being hesitant to kick, whether it's for the corner, whether it's for a high ball, for an up and under, for a box kick. Let's cut this out, okay? Possession ball. We want to keep the ball. We want to keep the ball, and we want to have game line success every time we touch the ball. Whether it's 1 metre, 2 metres, 10 metres, 2 metres again, whatever it is, we want to constantly just be dragging ourselves at the field. We're not going to be doing that by pick and goes. I'm talking about tactical out, but very simple out to in or in to out. You got to have those 2 lines going out in, and you got to make a selection of who's going to go with what each time, right? Be hesitant to kick, and even if I'm saying like, do not be kicking for the corner like we were doing against Ireland to try and put pressure on them. Their line-out's too good. We're also not competing at the line-out, okay? If you want to do that, compete for the line-out, but we're not doing that against Ireland, and we're not going to do it against France. Keep the ball. Let's play with the ball. Let's do this. So that's the attack. What's the defence going to be like? And Jesus, my voice is going, and I'm going to get through this video God knows how, right? We're getting through this. Defence. Problem is, you cannot have a defensive restructure at this point in the tournament. You're committed to what you're going to have to do. And what was my comment about the defence against Ireland? Very ferocious, very good for 40 to 60 minutes, and it was obvious that everyone started to run out of gas. How do you change that? Well, you change it by doing it less. And this is where the attack merges with the defence. Hold on to the ball, consistent game line success, and trust me, you ever played rugby before, you understand, attacking, even if you're doing crash balls and running here and there, it is less tiring than defence. So the defence is still going to be the same ferocious level that we had against Ireland. However, the plan is just to do it less. Hold on to the ball for longer. And that's it. That's what I think England need to do to have a chance of winning this game. I don't think they will do it. I think the chances are, to be honest with you, that France come in and they win the game by more than about 20 points. I honestly think it can be that bad. Twickenham is a fickle crowd. Honestly, you know, I think France versus Ireland, I think France have the better team on paper later in the tournament because Ireland are at home. France don't travel as well. I think Ireland win, but in this occasion, France will beat England, and I think they'll get them to quite the crowd early. Anyway, that's it from me. Ciao.